My brother stood up in front of 30 relatives at Thanksgiving and raised his glass. Everyone smiled, everyone except me. Then he pointed directly at me and laughed. "Here's to my little sister, 4 years in the army, and she still hasn't done anything important." The room exploded with laughter. My father smirked. My mother looked away. I stared down at my plate and said nothing, because what nobody at that table knew was that in less than 10 minutes, a 4-star general was about to walk through that front door looking for me. And when he did, my brother's smile disappeared. If you enjoy powerful stories of family betrayal, shocking twists, emotional justice, and unforgettable revenge, you're in the right place. Every story on this channel reveals what happens when people underestimate the wrong person. Before we begin, take a moment to subscribe the Family Revenge Chronicles channel, like this video, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now let's get into today's story. My name is Sarah Thompson. For as long as I can remember, my older brother Ryan was the center of attention. At every family gathering, every birthday, every holiday, Ryan was the star. When Ryan scored a touchdown in high school, my father talked about it for years. When Ryan graduated college, my parents threw a huge party. When Ryan started a business, my mother told everyone she met. Then there was me, the quiet daughter, the daughter who learned very early that achievements only mattered if Ryan wasn't in the room. I remember being 16 years old and bringing home a report card filled with straight A's. I walked into the kitchen smiling. "Dad, look." He barely glanced at it. "That's nice." Then he immediately turned toward Ryan. "So how was football practice?" That moment stayed with me, not because it was the worst thing that ever happened, because it happened all the time, year after year, achievement after achievement. No matter what I accomplished, Ryan always received the spotlight. By the time I graduated high school, I stopped trying to compete. I stopped hoping for approval. I stopped expecting recognition. And that decision changed my life, because while Ryan followed the path everyone expected, I chose a different road, a road that would eventually bring me back to that Thanksgiving dinner, the dinner nobody would ever forget. While Ryan was planning his future in business, I was trying to figure out how I would pay for college. My parents had already made their priorities clear. Most of their savings had gone toward Ryan's education. The rest seemed to disappear helping him start his business. One evening, I sat at the kitchen table looking through scholarship applications. My mother walked in. "What are you doing?" "Trying to figure out how to pay for college." She nodded absent-mindedly. Then she asked a question that changed everything. "Have you considered staying home instead?" I looked up. "What? You could work locally." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Ryan received support. Ryan received opportunities. Ryan received investments, and I was being told to lower my expectations. That night, I made a decision. If nobody was going to invest in me, I would invest in myself. A few weeks later, I walked into a military recruiting office. It wasn't because I wanted attention. It wasn't because I wanted approval. It was because I wanted a future. For the first time in my life, someone looked at me and asked, "What do you want?" Nobody in my family had ever asked that question, not once, and for the first time, I had an answer. I want to prove I can do something important. The recruiter smiled. "Then let's get started." I had no idea that decision would completely change my life, or that years later, it would make my brother regret every cruel word he ever spoke. Becoming someone they never expected, basic training was harder than anything I had ever experienced. The days were long, the expectations were high. Every muscle in my body hurt. Many people quit. Some people went home. But every time I felt like giving up, I remembered something. Nobody expected me to succeed, and somehow that motivated me. I wanted to prove everyone wrong. Most importantly, I wanted to prove myself wrong. For years I had been told I wasn't special, I wasn't talented, I wasn't important. The military taught me something different. It taught me discipline, confidence, responsibility, leadership. For the first time, my effort actually mattered. Nobody cared who my brother was. Nobody cared about family favoritism. Results spoke for themselves, and I delivered. Within a few years, I earned promotions, additional responsibilities, leadership roles. Slowly, my confidence grew, but every time I returned home, things felt exactly the same. Ryan remained the family hero. I remained an afterthought. No matter how much I achieved, my family acted like nothing had changed. At first it bothered me. Eventually I stopped caring. Or at least I thought I did, until Thanksgiving arrived. Ryan's perfect life. 3 days before Thanksgiving, my mother called. Ryan is hosting dinner this year. I wasn't surprised. Ryan always hosted, mostly because he loved being the center of attention. My mother continued, "Everyone will be there." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to stay home. Every holiday felt the same. Ryan bragged, my parents praised him, and I sat quietly in the corner. But then my mother added, "It would mean a lot if you came." I almost laughed. The truth was, my attendance only mattered because appearances mattered. Still, I agreed. Thanksgiving morning arrived. As I drove toward Ryan's house, I felt a familiar knot in my stomach. His home was enormous. Luxury cars filled the driveway. Guests were already arriving. Everything looked perfect, exactly how Ryan liked it. Inside, relatives gathered around expensive decorations and elaborate food displays. The entire house felt more like a performance than a family gathering. Then Ryan appeared. Expensive watch, perfect smile, designer clothes. He wrapped me in a quick hug. "Sarah, Ryan." He stepped back. "Still in the army?" I forced a smile. "Yes." He laughed. "Wow, you're really committed to that." Something about the way he said it felt insulting, but before I could respond, he walked away. I watched him greet other guests, shake hands, tell stories, accept compliments, the king of his own little kingdom. I had a feeling the day wasn't going to end well. Unfortunately, I was right. The public humiliation dinner began shortly after 6. Nearly 30 relatives sat around tables spread throughout the dining room. Everyone seemed happy. Everyone seemed comfortable. Then Ryan stood up and picked up his glass. Immediately the room quieted. Ryan loved speeches, especially speeches about himself. He smiled confidently. "I just want to thank everyone for being here." People nodded. Several relatives applauded. Then Ryan started listing accomplishments from the past year. Business growth, investments, new properties. Every sentence felt like a celebration of Ryan. Then suddenly he looked at me and smiled, a smile that made my stomach tighten. "You know, family gatherings are important." Several people nodded. Ryan pointed toward me. "They remind us that everyone chooses their own path." The room became quieter. I immediately knew where this was going. Ryan chuckled. "Some of us build successful companies." A few relatives laughed. Others spend years following orders and pretending that's success. The room erupted with uncomfortable laughter. My face burned, but Ryan wasn't finished. He raised his glass. "Here's to my little sister." More laughter. 4 years in the army and she's still trying to figure out what she wants to be. The room exploded. Some relatives laughed. Others looked uncomfortable. My father smirked. My mother looked down. And in that moment, something inside me broke. Not because of Ryan, because nobody stopped him. Nobody defended me. Nobody said he was wrong. I stared at my plate and remained silent. Exactly what Ryan expected. Exactly what everyone expected. But then the doorbell rang. Nobody paid attention. The conversation continued. The laughter continued until a second ring echoed through the house. This time louder, more urgent. Ryan frowned. Who could that be? Nobody knew, but within moments, everything was about to change, and the person standing on the other side of that door would leave the entire room speechless. The room was still buzzing with laughter when the front door opened. At first, nobody paid much attention. People assumed it was another guest arriving late. Then the conversation slowly died. One by one, heads turned toward the entrance. A man wearing a military dress uniform stepped inside. The room immediately became quiet. Conversation stopped. Forks froze halfway to mouths. Ryan looked confused. The officer stepped aside, and another man entered. The moment I saw him, I nearly dropped my glass, because standing in Ryan's foyer was Lieutenant General Robert Mitchell, one of the most respected leaders in the army, a man whose reputation was known throughout the entire command. The room became completely silent. Nobody understood what was happening. Ryan forced a nervous smile. "Can I help you?" The general looked around the room, then asked a simple question. "Is Captain Sarah Thompson here?" Every head turned toward me. Ryan's face lost all color. My father stared at me. My mother looked completely shocked. The general smiled. "There you are, Captain." I slowly stood. "Sir." The general walked across the room, then did something nobody expected. He shook my hand firmly. "Good to see you again." The room looked frozen. Ryan blinked several times, clearly trying to understand what he was seeing. The general turned toward the guests. "I hope we're not interrupting Thanksgiving." Nobody answered. Everyone was too stunned. Then he smiled. "Actually, we're here because Captain Thompson couldn't attend tomorrow's ceremony." My stomach tightened. Tomorrow's ceremony. I suddenly knew what this was about, but nobody else did, especially not Ryan, and that made the next few minutes even more satisfying. The secret nobody knew. The general motioned toward the officer standing behind him. The officer stepped forward carrying a presentation case. Ryan looked completely lost. My father looked confused. The general smiled. "Captain Thompson recently completed one of the most important leadership programs in the Army." The room remained silent. Out of hundreds of candidates, she ranked among the very best. My mother slowly covered her mouth. The general continued. "Her leadership, dedication, and service record have made her an example for younger officers throughout the command." I could see Ryan becoming increasingly uncomfortable, because everything he had just said about me was being dismantled in front of everyone, one sentence at a time. The general wasn't finished. Most people never hear about the sacrifices military leaders make. His eyes moved around the room. They miss birthdays. They miss holidays. They miss family milestones. The room became painfully quiet. They serve because they believe something larger than themselves matters. Then he looked directly at me, and Captain Thompson has done exactly that. The officer opened the presentation case. Inside was a medal. Several relatives gasped. Ryan looked like he had been punched in the stomach. The general carefully lifted the medal, then stepped closer. "Captain Sarah Thompson, on behalf of the United States Army, thank you for your service." The room watched in complete silence as he pinned the medal onto my jacket. For a moment, nobody moved, nobody spoke, nobody even breathed. The same room that had laughed at me 10 minutes earlier was now staring at me with disbelief, and for the first time in my life, nobody was looking at Ryan. Ryan tries to recover. The applause started slowly, then grew louder. Several relatives stood, others followed. Soon almost everyone was clapping, except Ryan. His forced smile looked painful. The spotlight had shifted, and he hated it. The general continued speaking. "There's one more reason we came." My heart skipped. I knew what was coming, but my family didn't. The general unfolded a document, then smiled. "Effective next month, Captain Sarah Thompson will be promoted to Major." The room exploded. Several relatives cheered. My mother burst into tears. My father looked speechless. Ryan looked completely defeated. Years of jokes, years of disrespect, years of being treated like the family disappointment, and now 30 people were watching reality catch up with him. The general shook my hand again. "Congratulations, Major." For a moment I couldn't speak, because all those years of sacrifice suddenly felt worth it. Every deployment, every lonely holiday, every difficult decision, every moment of doubt, it all led here. Not to prove Ryan wrong, not to impress my parents, but to prove to myself that I was capable of more than they ever believed. The family's sudden change. The moment the general left, everything changed. Suddenly relatives wanted to talk to me. People asked questions, complimented my achievements, praised my service. The same people who ignored me all afternoon suddenly acted interested. I recognized it immediately, because I'd seen it before. People often respect success after someone else validates it. My mother hugged me tightly. "Why didn't you tell us?" I smiled sadly. "When would you have listened?" She couldn't answer. My father approached next. For several moments he stood silently. Then he said something I never expected. "I was wrong." Those 3 words carried more weight than he realized, because they were words I had waited years to hear. Ryan remained across the room, alone, watching. The center of attention had finally moved somewhere else, and he didn't know what to do. Ryan's last attempt. As guests prepared to leave, Ryan finally approached me. His confidence was gone. The arrogance had disappeared. In its place was something else, embarrassment. He forced a laugh. "I was just joking earlier." I looked at him calmly. "Were you?" He shifted uncomfortably. "You know I didn't mean anything by it." I remembered every holiday, every insult, every sarcastic comment, every time he made himself feel bigger by making me feel smaller. Then I smiled, for the first time all night. "That's okay." Ryan looked relieved, until I continued. "You don't need to explain yourself." His smile faded. "Why?" "Because the answer was obvious. Everyone already saw who you are." Ryan had no response, because deep down he knew it was true. The general didn't embarrass him, the promotion didn't embarrass him, his own behavior embarrassed him. The entire family had witnessed it, and there was no way to take it back. The Thanksgiving I'll never forget. Months later, my promotion became official. Life continued moving forward. New responsibilities, new opportunities, new challenges. But whenever people ask about the most memorable Thanksgiving of my life, I always think about that day. Not because of the medal, not because of the promotion, not because of the general, because that was the day I finally stopped seeking approval from people who refused to give it. For years, I wanted my family to see my value. For years, I wanted recognition, respect, acceptance. Then I realized something. The people who truly matter don't need proof, and the people who demand proof are rarely satisfied anyway. The greatest victory wasn't Ryan's humiliation. It wasn't the applause. It wasn't the promotion. It was freedom. Freedom from needing validation from people who never appreciated me. And once I learned that lesson, everything changed. Final reflection and moral. Sometimes the people who laugh at you are judging a chapter of your life they don't understand. They see the struggle, but they don't see the sacrifice. They see the hard days, but they don't see the victories being built behind the scenes. My brother believed success was measured by money, attention, and applause. The army taught me something different. Success is measured by character, integrity, discipline, and the ability to keep moving forward even when nobody is cheering for you. Because one day, if you stay committed long enough, the same people who doubted you may be forced to watch your success from the front row. Thank you for listening to Family Revenge Chronicles. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the Family Revenge Chronicles channel, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us, what would you have said to Ryan after the general arrived? And remember, the best revenge isn't proving someone wrong, it's becoming everything they said you could never be. 3 weeks after Thanksgiving, I thought the entire situation was behind me. The promotion ceremony was over. Work had become busy again, and for the first time in years, I felt at peace. Then my phone rang. The caller ID showed my father's name. I stared at it for several seconds. Since Thanksgiving, he had called more than he had during the previous 3 years combined. I answered. "Hello?" His voice sounded different, older, tired. "Sarah, can we talk?" I immediately knew something was wrong. "What happened?" The silence lasted several seconds. Then he spoke. "It's Ryan." My stomach tightened. "What about him?" Another pause. Then came words I never expected to hear. "His company is in trouble. The golden child starts falling." Over the next hour, I learned the truth. Ryan's business wasn't nearly as successful as everyone believed. For years, he had exaggerated, bragged, pretended. Behind the scenes, things were falling apart. Several large contracts had failed, loans were overdue, investors were asking questions, and now the company was facing serious financial problems. The perfect image Ryan spent years creating was beginning to crack. I wasn't happy about it. Despite everything, he was still my brother, but I couldn't ignore the irony. For years, Ryan measured everyone's worth by money. Now the thing he valued most was disappearing. The request. A week later, my parents invited me to dinner. The moment I arrived, I felt something strange. They were being unusually nice. Too nice. My mother cooked all my favorite meals. My father kept complimenting my career. Ryan barely spoke. Halfway through dinner, I finally understood why. My father cleared his throat. "Sarah." I looked up. "Yes?" He exchanged a nervous glance with my mother. Then Ryan finally spoke. "I need your help." The room became silent. For years I had heard those words from everyone except Ryan. Now he was saying them, and somehow it felt strange. "What kind of help?" Ryan swallowed hard. "The bank is refusing to extend our credit line." I listened quietly. "We need someone to co-sign." I nearly laughed. after years of being treated like a disappointment. The family success story suddenly needed my help. The decision. That night I sat alone, thinking. Part of me wanted to say no immediately. Part of me remembered every insult, every joke, every family gathering, every moment Ryan made me feel small. But Grandpa used to tell me something. Never make decisions when you're angry. So I waited. 3 days later, I met Ryan for coffee. For the first time in our lives, it was just the two of us. No audience, no parents, no relatives, no spotlight, just two siblings. Ryan looked exhausted. The confidence was gone. The arrogance had disappeared. And suddenly I realized something. This wasn't the same Ryan who mocked me at Thanksgiving. Life had humbled him. The truth finally comes out. For nearly an hour we talked, really talked, maybe for the first time ever. Eventually Ryan looked down at the table, then quietly said, "You know why I always picked on you?" I shook my head. Ryan laughed bitterly. "Because Grandpa liked you more." I stared at him. "What?" "He respected you." Ryan's eyes remained fixed on the table. I spent years trying to earn that respect. For the first time, I saw something unexpected. Jealousy. Not mine, his. The golden child had spent years envying the one thing he could never buy, Grandpa's genuine respect. The real victory. In the end, I didn't co-sign the loan, not because I wanted revenge, because it wasn't financially responsible. Ryan understood. For once, he didn't argue. Instead, he stood up and held out his hand. "I'm sorry." The words sounded genuine, more genuine than anything he'd ever said. I shook his hand, then surprised myself. I hugged him, not because he deserved it, because I was tired of carrying resentment, and for the first time, I felt completely free. Final ending. Years later, when people tell the story of that Thanksgiving, they always focus on the general, the medal, the promotion, Ryan's embarrassed face, but that's not what I remember most. What I remember is realizing that my worth was never determined by my family's opinion, not my father's, not my mother's, not Ryan's, not anyone else's, because the moment you stop asking people to see your value, you finally start seeing it yourself, and that changes everything. A month passed, then another. Life settled into a routine. Work kept me busy. My promotion brought new responsibilities, and for the first time in years, family gatherings felt different. Ryan had become quieter, less arrogant, more thoughtful. But Christmas was approaching, and everyone knew Christmas in our family had always been complicated. My mother insisted on hosting. She wanted the entire family together. Apparently, she hoped the holidays would help repair old wounds. I wasn't sure that was possible. Still, I agreed to attend. On Christmas Eve, I arrived at my parents' house carrying gifts. The moment I stepped inside, I noticed something unusual. My father looked nervous, very nervous, almost like he was waiting for something or someone. I didn't understand why until dinner began. Halfway through the meal, my father stood up. The room immediately became quiet, and then he said something nobody expected. "Before we continue, there's something I need to tell everyone. Dad finally tells the truth." My father took a deep breath. For a man who always appeared confident, he suddenly looked uncomfortable. His hands trembled slightly. My mother squeezed his arm. Then he looked directly at me. "Sarah, this is long overdue." The room became silent. Every relative watched. "I owe you an apology." I froze, because my father never apologized, not to anyone, especially not publicly. He swallowed hard. "When you were growing up, I made mistakes. Nobody spoke. I spent so much time focusing on Ryan that I failed to see what was right in front of me." My chest tightened. The room felt completely still. "I thought success looked a certain way." His voice cracked. "I thought money and business were the most important things." Then he looked at Ryan, and I pushed that belief onto everyone else. Ryan lowered his eyes. For years, my father had treated Ryan like a future king. Now he finally seemed to understand the damage it caused. Then he turned back toward me. "I should have been proud of you long before that general walked through the door." Tears filled my mother's eyes. Several relatives looked emotional, and for the first time in my life, I believed my father meant every word. The letter nobody knew about. After dinner, my father disappeared into his office. A few minutes later, he returned carrying an old envelope. The paper looked worn, yellow with age. He handed it to me. "Your grandfather left this for me." I frowned. "What is it?" My father looked down. A letter. Immediately my heart skipped. Another letter from Grandpa. My hands shook as I carefully opened it. The handwriting was unmistakable, Grandpa's. The room became silent as I began reading. Dear Michael, if you're reading this, then I am gone. My father's eyes immediately filled with tears. I know you're going to spend time thinking about mistakes. I know you're going to wish you handled some things differently. The room remained quiet. Then came the sentence that hit hardest. Don't waste too much time regretting the past. My father covered his face. Instead of anger, instead of criticism, Grandpa had left forgiveness, and that forgiveness was breaking him apart. Grandpa's final lesson. The letter continued. Children don't need perfect parents. They need parents willing to admit when they're wrong. The room became emotional. Even Ryan was wiping tears from his eyes. Then came Grandpa's final message. The strongest families aren't the ones that avoid mistakes. They're the ones brave enough to fix them. I finished reading. Nobody spoke. Nobody needed to, because everyone understood. Grandpa had somehow managed to teach one final lesson even after he was gone. A lesson about pride, forgiveness, and second chances. Ryan's Christmas gift. Later that evening, Ryan approached me carrying a small box. I looked confused. What's this? He smiled awkwardly. A Christmas gift. I laughed. You already got me something. Not this. I opened the box. Inside was an old photograph. A photograph I hadn't seen in years. It showed me and Grandpa fishing together when I was 12 years old. I stared at it silently. Ryan smiled. I found it while cleaning. I looked up. Why give it to me? His answer surprised me. Because you deserve it more than anyone. For several seconds I couldn't speak. Then I hugged him, and for the first time since childhood, it felt like I actually had a brother. 5 years later. 5 years passed. Life changed in ways none of us expected. My military career continued growing. Ryan rebuilt his business from the ground up, this time honestly, without pretending, without chasing approval. My parents became grandparents. Family gatherings became simpler, smaller, more genuine. Then one summer evening, we all gathered on the old porch at my parents' house. The sun slowly disappeared below the horizon, and for a moment, everything felt peaceful. Ryan looked toward me. You know Grandpa would be laughing right now. I smiled. Why? Because somehow he fixed this family after he was gone. Everyone laughed softly. Because it was true. Final reflection. For years I believed revenge meant making people suffer. I believed justice meant watching others lose. But life taught me something different. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't humiliation. Sometimes it isn't revenge. Sometimes it's growth. Sometimes it's becoming stronger without becoming bitter. Sometimes it's giving people a chance to become better than they were. My brother mocked me. My father ignored me. My family underestimated me. But none of those things defined my future. Because your future isn't determined by the people who doubt you. It's determined by what you do next. And that's the lesson Grandpa spent his entire life trying to teach us. Thank you for watching Family Revenge Chronicles. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the Family Revenge Chronicles channel, like this video, and tell us in the comments, would you have forgiven Ryan, or would you have walked away forever? And remember, the people who underestimate you today may someday become the people who admire you most. 3 months after Christmas, Sarah receives an unexpected call. Ryan's former business partner arrives with shocking information. For years, Ryan hid major financial problems from the family. The company wasn't struggling, it was collapsing, and now a lawsuit threatens everything. Ryan had spent years pretending to be successful. Now the truth was coming out. The family crisis. Dad immediately jumps into action. Just like old times, everyone assumes he'll rescue Ryan, again. Sarah watches quietly. The same pattern she had seen her entire life. Ryan makes mistakes. Dad saves him. But this time, something feels different. Dad doesn't seem as certain. The lawsuit changed everything. Within days, the entire family was talking about Ryan's company. Lawyers, debt, missed payments, investors demanding answers. The perfect image Ryan had spent years building was falling apart. One evening, my father called a family meeting. The same dining room, the same table, the same people, and somehow it felt like we were reliving the past. Ryan sat quietly. My mother looked worried. Dad stared at several financial documents spread across the table. Finally, he spoke. Ryan needs help. Nobody seemed surprised. I certainly wasn't. For most of my life, helping Ryan had been my father's favorite hobby. The golden child was in trouble, and Dad was preparing to save him again. Then Dad looked directly at me. Sarah, I looked up. Yes? His expression became serious. Before I make any decisions, there's something I need to say. The room became quiet. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then Dad said something I never expected. I spent years teaching Ryan that somebody would always rescue him. Ryan lowered his head. I thought I was helping. Dad sighed heavily, but I wasn't helping. The room remained silent. I was preventing him from learning responsibility. Nobody argued, because everyone knew it was true. For years, Ryan had lived without consequences. Now the bill had finally arrived. Ryan tells the truth. A few days later, Ryan asked to meet me. We met at a small coffee shop, the same place where we had spoken months earlier. Only this time he looked worse, much worse. The confidence was gone. The expensive clothes had disappeared. Even his posture seemed different. Tired, defeated. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Then Ryan finally broke the silence. You want to know the truth? I nodded. Ryan stared out the window. I've been scared for years. That wasn't what I expected. Scared of what? He laughed bitterly. Failing. The answer surprised me. Ryan continued. You always thought I was confident. I didn't respond, because honestly, I had. He shook his head. I wasn't confident. His eyes met mine. I was terrified. The room felt smaller, quieter. Suddenly, I wasn't looking at the brother who mocked me. I was looking at someone carrying years of pressure, years of expectations, years of fear. Ryan took a deep breath. Do you know why I bragged all the time? I shook my head. Because if I stopped bragging, people might realize I wasn't as successful as they thought. For the first time in my life, I understood him. Not because I agreed with him, because I finally saw the insecurity hiding underneath everything. Grandpa's hidden journal. Several weeks later, something unexpected happened. While cleaning boxes in the attic, my mother discovered one of Grandpa's old journals. Inside were years of handwritten notes, family memories, personal thoughts, observations. One evening, we gathered together and began reading. Most entries were simple. Stories about fishing trips, holiday memories, family vacations. Then I found an entry dated almost 3 years before Grandpa passed away. The moment I started reading, the room became silent. Ryan wants everyone to think he has all the answers. I looked up. Ryan froze. Then I continued. Sarah thinks nobody notices her sacrifices. My chest tightened. The room became completely still. Then came Grandpa's final observation. The funny thing is that both of them are wrong. Nobody moved. Ryan needs humility. Sarah needs confidence. And one day, life will teach both of them exactly what they need. I stopped reading. Nobody spoke, because somehow Grandpa had predicted everything, years before it happened. Family finally changes. That summer felt different. Not perfect, different. For the first time in years, conversations felt honest. People stopped pretending. Ryan stopped acting like he had all the answers. Dad stopped comparing us. Mom stopped avoiding uncomfortable truths. The family wasn't magically fixed. Real families never are. But we were finally dealing with reality, and reality turned out to be better than the performance we'd been putting on for years. One afternoon, Dad invited me to lunch, just the two of us, something that had almost never happened growing up. Halfway through the meal, he smiled. You know what your grandfather would say right now? I laughed. What? Dad smiled. He'd tell us we took the long way around. For the first time in years, I laughed with him, not out of politeness, not out of obligation, because I genuinely wanted to. Chapter 30, The Thanksgiving Nobody Expected. Exactly 1 year after the general walked through Ryan's front door, Thanksgiving arrived again. This time, the gathering was smaller. No speeches, no bragging, no competition, just family. As dinner began, everyone settled into their seats. Then Ryan stood up. Immediately, the room became nervous. Several relatives exchanged worried looks. Ryan noticed and laughed. Relax. The room chuckled. Then he raised his glass. A year earlier, this moment had ended in humiliation. This time it was different. Ryan looked directly at me, then smiled. A year ago, I made a fool of myself. Several people laughed, including me. Ryan continued. I spent years measuring success by money, attention, and status. The room listened quietly, but my sister taught me something. I froze. Ryan raised his glass. Character matters more. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then everyone raised their glasses, even Dad, even Mom, and in that moment, I realized something important. The general's visit wasn't the thing that changed our family. The promotion wasn't the thing that changed our family. The lawsuit wasn't the thing that changed our family. The truth changed our family. Because once people stop pretending, real healing can finally begin. Final message. For years I thought my greatest challenge was being underestimated. I was wrong. My greatest challenge was learning that my worth never depended on other people's opinions. Not my brother's, not my father's, not anyone's. Because confidence built on approval disappears when approval disappears. Real confidence comes from knowing who you are, even when nobody else sees it yet. And sometimes, the people who doubt you the most end up teaching you the most important lessons of all. Thank you for watching Family Revenge Chronicles. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the Family Revenge Chronicles channel, like this video, and tell us in the comments, what was the most satisfying moment in Sarah's journey? And remember, the best revenge isn't making someone suffer, it's becoming the person they never believed you could become.